Hi and welcome back to the final part of this Daemon Targaryen series, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Stay tuned for the end where I discuss my very own personal opinions about Daemon Targaryen and the kind of man that he was. I'm also sprinkling in some opinions about House of the Dragon there if you're interested, which is premiering in a month. Exciting, guys. We've been waiting for this for so long. But without further ado, let's begin. The day after, a hasty coronation was held for Rhaenyra, and Steffon Darklyn, late of Aegon's Kingsguard, had arrived on Dragonstone, and with him he'd brought the crown that the old King Jaehaerys had worn. 300 pairs of eyes looked upon as Prince Daemon placed the old King's crown atop Rhaenyra's head and hailed her as the Queen of the Seven Kingdoms. Rhaenyra in turn named her oldest son Jaehaerys as the Prince of Dragonstone and heir to the throne. However, her other son was murdered by Aemon Targaryen, his uncle, in 129 AC, and that's when the War of Words and Ravens ended, and the War of Fire and Blood began in earnest. Rhaenyra collapsed when she heard of the death of her son, but Daemon promised to avenge Lucerys. "An eye for an eye, a son for a son," Prince Daemon wrote. "Lucerys shall be avenged." Daemon still had friends among all the low places of King's Landing, so it wasn't exactly difficult for him to put in motion what happened next, which was two men known as Blood and Cheese killing King Aegon the Older's son, Jaehaerys. They'd snuck into Queen Alicent's bedchamber where they knew Queen Helena would come with her children to bid her mother goodnight, and then they told Queen Helena to choose which of her sons to put to the sword, and in the end she chose Prince Maelor, her youngest. They killed Prince Jaehaerys instead, and it was quite the brutal thing. And Daemon, who'd been based in Harrenhal, left when Prince Aemond and Sir Criston Cole began advancing, and instead he flew to assist Rhaenyra in capturing the capital. But after that was done, him and the Dragonseed Nettles traveled to the Trident to find Prince Aemond and Vhagar to put an end to them. And I think the reason why Daemon had such a large vendetta against his nephew was partly because Aemon had claimed Vhagar, the biggest dragon in existence, and, more importantly, its previous rider was Laena Velaryon, Daemon's dead wife, the one we could put an argument for that he loved the most. However, their search bore little fruit. Each dawn, Caraxes and Sheepstealer would fly from Maidenpool high above the riverlands in ever-widening circles in hopes of catching Vhagar below, only to return defeated at dusk. And I think I forgot to mention what dragon seeds were, so let's do a quick recap. Rhaenyra had so many dragons, but there weren't enough Targaryens alive to ride them, so they needed people with Targaryen blood to lay claim to those dragons. So what more apt place to begin looking than Dragonstone, where all the Targaryen princes, etc. were spending their summers lazing about, intermingling with the natives. So there were lots of Targaryen bastards or just children who had Targaryen blood in them from their mother, from their father, etc. Diluted or potent, a parent or a grandparent. It didn't really matter as long as you could claim the dragon. It was actually one of Rhaenyra's sons that came to this idea, I think, but basically they arranged for all of the people who had Targaryen blood, were Targaryen bastards, or just Valyrian with Targaryen blood so they could ride dragons, to come and try to lay claim to them. And that led to a lot of people dying, but also some of them claimed the dragons. So they were on Rhaenyra's side then, but some of them proved to be deceitful later on. Anyway, so now she had a bunch of riders for the dragons, and Nettles was one of them. But the thing with Nettles was that people didn't really know if she had, speculations that she was Daemon's daughter existed. There's theories about that. But some people didn't think that Nettles had Targaryen blood in her. That could have brought up the discussion that, well, if she's just an ordinary girl who coaxed Sheepstealer into letting her ride him, then what kind of consequences does that have for us as Targaryens? Because our only claim to superiority is that we have this magic blood that allows us to marry our siblings, that allows us to keep the blood of Valyria pure, that allows us to ride these dragons. Why are we kings and queens if this power isn't limited to us? This could have catastrophic consequences if it got out. Massive catastrophe. Like, no one would want anything like that to come out. So I guess it's just easier to say, like, oh yeah, they had this kind of heritage, because what if people start questioning your blood? start questioning why you are kings and queens, start wanting to claim the dragons that exist. Terrifying, catastrophic. And this actually we could discuss in A Song of Ice and Fire, where Euron Greyjoy has no Targaryen blood, but he has that horn, so he could potentially summon one of Dany's dragons. Interesting. However, Lord Moon made so bold as to suggest that the dragon riders divide their search so as to cover twice the ground, but Daemon refused because Vhagar had grown nigh as large as Balerion the Black Dread, and only together did they have a chance of defeating the great beast. Daemon kept Nettles by his side in day and night, sky and castle. By Mushroom's account, Daemon had come to love Nettles and had even taken her into his bed. She'd been 17 while Daemon was 49, so icky. But Munkin wrote in his true telling that Nettles was a skinny brown girl on a skinny brown dragon, even though he'd never seen her himself. Maester Norin writes that Daemon and Nettles supped together every night and broke their fast together in the morning, and that he instructed her in common courtesy. So we could say maybe she was a bit of a passion project for Daemon. However, the Maester also writes that Daemon doted upon the brown girl as a man might dote upon his daughter, and gave her gifts, including an ivory-handled hairbrush. Daemon also taught Nettles to wash herself, where he often shared a tub with her, soaping her back or washing the dragon stink from her hair, both of them as naked as their name days. So this kind of makes me think that Daemon did have a romantic relationship with Nettles, because why would you bathe with her naked otherwise? I mean, you could teach her to bathe by sitting on the side, you know? You don't have to bathe with you don't have to bathe with her. And this also gives the ick for the theories that she's his daughter, because why would you do that with your daughter? Yeah, anyways, just my thoughts. However, there's no solid proof that Daemon had carnal knowledge of Nettles. And as I mentioned earlier, 2 of the dragon seeds proved treacherous, and Queen Rhaenyra asked Mysaria, who'd been made the Mistress of Whispers, if the remaining dragon seeds would betray her too. And Mysaria said, "The girl has already betrayed you, my queen. Even now she shares your husband's bed, and soon enough she'll have his bastard in her belly." Queen Rhaenyra grew most wroth, and ordered that Lord Mooten behead the young Nettles, and then said, "No harm is to be done to my lord husband, Prince Daemon of House Targaryen. Send him back to me when the deed is done, for we have urgent need of him." Lord Mooten was unsure on what to do, as Nettles was a guest beneath his roof, and to break guest right was a horrible crime. And he said, "Would that I'd never read this letter." And spoke up Maester Norin, saying, "Mayhaps you never did." Maester Norin, a man of 22 years, then found Prince Daemon and Nettles during their supper and showed them the letter. Weary after a long day of fruitless flight, they were sharing a simple meal of boiled beef and beets when I entered, talking softly with each other. Of what I can't say. The prince greeted me politely, but as he read, I saw the joy go from his eyes and a sadness descend upon him, like a weight too heavy to be borne. When the girl asked what was in the letter, he said, "A queen's words, a whore's work." Meaning that Daemon knew who was behind this. He knew that Mysaria maybe wanted revenge on him, so she assigned for his only friend, partner, lover, passion project to be killed, you know? Daemon then drew his sword and asked if Lord Mooten's men were waiting outside. Maester Norin said that he came alone and falsely declared that no one except them knew of the contents of the letter. "You're a bad maester, but a good man," Daemon told him. As dawn broke, Nettles and Daemon appeared in the yard. Her riding leathers were stained with blood when she mounted her dragon. Maester Norin records, "Her cheeks were stained with tears." Though no words were exchanged between man and maid, Caraxes raised his head and let out a curdling scream that broke almost every window in Jonquil's tower. After Nettles' departure, Daemon traveled alone to Harrenhal to await Prince Aemon. Lord Moon changed his allegiance to Aegon the Older after that, and Daemon would walk the cavernous halls of Harrenhal alone, with nothing but the company of his dragon Caraxes. Each night at dusk he'd slash at the heart tree in the Godswood to mark the passing of yet another day. 13 marks upon that wirewood can still be seen today. old wounds, deep and dark. The lords who ruled Harrenhal since Daemon's day say they bleed afresh every spring. On the 14th day, Prince Aemond arrived with Alice Rivers, who was with his child. "Nuncle, I hear you've been seeking us." "Only you," Daemon replied. "Who told you where to find me?" Prince Aemon said that Alice Rivers had seen Daemon in a storm cloud in a mountain pool at dusk. Prince Aemon then said it was foolish of Daemon to come alone. "Were I not alone, you would not have come," said Daemon. "Yet you are, and here I am. You've lived far too long, Nuncle." "On that much we agree." Then the dragons danced, and it is said that Daemon leapt from Caraxes to Vhagar and drove Dark Sister through Prince Aemon's blind eye, the edge coming out of his throat. Aemon was 20 years of age. Vhagar and Caraxes plunged into the lake, and the people who witnessed it said that no man nor dragon could survive such an impact. There cannot be any doubt that Daemon died too, though his remains were never found. And here we have my personal thoughts on Daemon Targaryen, so stick around if you want to hear that. And to begin, I think that as George R. R. Martin said, Daemon was a rogue if there ever was one. He's a mysterious character that we just can't figure out, or at least I can't. And I don't think we'll ever know the true motives he had for doing some of the things he did. And I think it's also going to remain like that. George R. R. Martin isn't going to give us a passage of text where it says clearly Daemon did this because of this reason, because that beats the point. Daemon is made to be contradictory. George inherently writes about the heart in conflict with itself, and what are humans if not contradictory? What are they if not in conflict with themselves at all times? We're gonna sympathize with him on some accounts, and on some accounts we're gonna be like, well, why would you do that? So it's a very fun way that he's been written, because he's made for our own observation, for our own conclusions, for our own takes. And I think that's wonderful, because you can have a conversation with someone and they can have observed him in a totally different way and taken away things from his personality in a totally different way. And it's very dynamic writing, and I really love that. I really do. I'm such a sucker for the morally ambiguous. So to continue on that thread, sure, Daemon did some very horrible things, but he also did some very, very good things, so I can't condemn nor praise him. I can just see him, I guess, and not to turn philosophical or anything like that. By see him, I mean that I take in his character, and I don't put him on a pedestal, but neither do I liken him to dirt. I just observe and take in the amount of his character, if that makes sense. Some of the stuff he did for himself, and other stuff he did for the sake of others. It's very liquid that way. It's very gray-toned. But something I am quite sure on is that Daemon didn't love Rhaenyra, or at least not in the romantic way that you would maybe want him to. I think that he groomed her from a young age by giving her gifts and enthralling her with his exciting, exotic tales of his adventurous life, and Rhaenyra loved that. She was a young girl stuck at court. All she had as a link to the rest of the world was Daemon. Daemon telling her about his stories, Daemon telling her about his exciting life that she could never live because she was the heir to the throne. She was a princess, a highborn princess, and a woman at that. You couldn't just go away and explore. It was a man's world. And Daemon was said to be exceptionally handsome too, so I don't think Rhaenyra had any trouble falling for him. He represented this strong figure in her life. He was strong, he was a warrior, he was handsome, he was tall, he was this sort of male figure that could protect her, that could keep her safe from the world in a way. Or maybe I'm just reading too much into it. He was different, he was exotic, he was more than a little dangerous, and I think that Rhaenyra liked that. She must have been in love with him, but he was for the most part just using her for his own agenda to be king. He cared for her, according to me, but he didn't love her. Daemon and Mysaria, for me, seemed like two people who liked each other but weren't in love. I think he was fond of Mysaria and that she was convenient for him at the time. Now Laena is an entirely different matter. Sure, House Velaryon was a rich match to marry into, but there wasn't really any compulsion or hidden benefit for him in marrying Laena. And from what I've read, Daemon seemed very taken by her. She was strong and beautiful and willful, and he married her impulsively, and then when she died, he was the one who found her and carried her back to her bedward. I can't even imagine how that must have hurt him, and he did grieve for her afterward. And then a few months later, he married Rhaenyra after Laenor was murdered, and there's actually a theory that Daemon had Laenor murdered so that he could marry Rhaenyra, but we won't go into that now. And Rhaenyra became pregnant quickly and had the baby at the end of the same year, which makes me think that perhaps Rhaenyra became pregnant before Daemon and her married. And his marriage to Rhaenyra seemed rocky, and I think that he saw her madness and desperation in the end, and he didn't think all that sacrifice was worth it anymore. Now, how he cared for Nettles is trickier. I think that Daemon enjoyed that Nettles wasn't quote-unquote proper with him because Rhaenyra had been a spoiled little girl, but Nettles wasn't afraid to get her hands dirty. He seemed fond of her, and she was crying when she had to leave, so I assume that she loved him. Daemon Targaryen is definitely one of the grayest characters that I've ever stumbled upon, and he fascinates me to no end. To no end, because I just can't get a reading on him, you know? But that's it for today, guys. But I thought that we could have a quick chat about House of the Dragon. It's only a month left. Can you imagine that? I feel like it was only yesterday that I woke up and I saw the post about, fire will rain or whatever. And I was like, is this a joke? But then I saw that HBO posted it and I was like, oh my god, it's happening, a Targaryen show. Oh my god. And I was like so excited. I had my reservations when it came to the cast, but now I've seen Emma Darcy as Rhaenyra, and she's absolutely eating it up. She is bodying Rhaenyra. She understood the assignment. She looks great. And then we have, of course, the man of the moment, Daemon Targaryen, played by Matt Smith, and I've got love. Don't misunderstand me. I've got love for Matt Smith ever since The Crown, man. Ever since The Crown. But this is a small reservation. This is such an inconsequential thing, but looking at him as Daemon, he is bodying Daemon in a way that he's everything I imagined for Daemon. He walks like the way I imagined Daemon would walk and everything. But his eyebrows are not there. And I understand, genetically you're like not supposed to have brown or dark brown or whatever eyebrows if you're platinum blonde naturally. But I just think he looks a bit washed out without it. He looks a bit elfish. His eyes turns, and Matt doesn't have a lot of eyebrows to begin with, but I just wish they would have put some semi-permanent dye on them or something. Oh, this is so bad. Sorry for that rant about Matt Smith's eyebrows, but I just feel like he would have bodied Daemon in a different way with dramatic eyebrows. But jokes aside, and these tiny things, I am excited for the show, and I've just been starving for so long for any sort of Targaryen content that I'm willing to eat this up, guys. I am willing to eat it up. I am eating what's on my plate. I am not going to be talking about, oh, I don't like that they casted these people or whatever, I'm very positive about this. I am very, very excited, and I hope that they make the best of what they have. But those are my opinions on the show, and I really think it's going to be great. Hopefully, don't quote me on it as I'm being quoted on it. But yeah, to summarize, I'm very excited about the show. Would you guys want a video or something where we dissect the episodes, where I discuss my opinions on it or anything like that? Because I could definitely do that if you've stuck around so far to the end as to hear me say this, because I genuinely, my views are going down, and it's because I haven't been active for like a year. I understand that. I'm hoping we'll grow a bit as a channel, but I have a lot of videos to be refilmed and a lot of videos to make, so I won't desert you guys just yet. But stay safe, guys, take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next one. Don't forget to subscribe, like this video, put on post notifications, all of that jazz. Have a nice day.